I'm going to show you guys. What the world needs now, Leo, is love with love. Good morning.
We're already live. Good morning to you too. Go ahead singing. I'm listening as you sing, please.
No, I don't think anybody need to be tortured. We have enough challenges in the world.
But you started it. You started it. So please continue this morning.
That's reserved for my show. I'm not in my shower right now, but no. But thank you, I appreciate it, but no.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
You're putting everybody back to bed, man.
It's the only thing that will.
CMT.
I don't know the words. I don't know the words. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Shernette. It's it's been tough. It's been upgrade. It's been a tough week, but somehow it's also been a very progressive, positive week.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yes, because the world needs it. It's really sad to lose someone in the way that he did. But what he has done, he has allowed us to come together, not just in Minnesota, not just in America, but across the world, because I think I heard what's his name, Martin Luther King said something like, and I help me if you think I'm wrong, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
And that sounds like something he would have said, yeah.
Yes, and it is very, very important, because I saw even Jamaica coming out and standing up against it. There was a little assembly, a protest at the U.S. Embassy in Jamaica yesterday.
Yeah, I did see that, and it was encouraging. It was only 4 people, but at the same time, it was encouraging to know that the ambassador came out and he stood with the people, like literally and figuratively. He was saying, "I hear you, and we're on the same page."
Yes, he said if he were in this country now, he would be protesting too. Those are encouraging words. And I didn't know that he was full Mexican. I didn't know that at all.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Well, he can't be full Mexican and be the U.S. Embassy, but I see what you're saying.
That's what he said.
And being the ambassador, rather.
Yeah. I don't think that there's any. I think you can't be a United States president. As long as you're a citizen. So
when you say full Mexican, he's an American. I'm just saying. I know what you mean.
All right. So but it's good to be able to celebrate in the mode of sadness. So we are celebrating the opportunity to get together in oneness for one cause of justice, cause of Black Lives Matter. All of that. It's real. It's fulfilling.
You know what it is too? I think it is just full time, and it's apparent throughout the entire world. It's full time that we just get back to being human beings and forget about the color, forget about, things that make us different. And that's the unfortunate thing that has been happening for years, and people capitalize on that and just try to hold others down. And I think this generation, and maybe a couple of generations before too, they were just silent because they figured, all right, it will work itself out. But obviously it's not. So it's really important to see that they, in their minds, all along were thinking, we can't continue like this. And they're making their voices heard. And that's so important right now, Leo. I really, hats off to everybody who's a part of this struggle.
You're listening to Shernette Bailey, and I am Leo Gilling on the Shernette and Leo and Shernette show this morning. And we are going to be talking about some serious matters today. We have several guests online. We have Dr. Grethel Bradford, and psychotherapist, and we have Dr. Beverly Gordon, coming up, and we also have Judge Norman Hemming, and then we also have later on in the show Mrs. Nicholson. That's Elaine, Sophia Elaine Nicholson. And we have some surprise guests popping in. Hopefully we'll see them pop in at some time to join the conversation, because this is such an important conversation around the world. Everybody is, and everybody, it started, ladies and gentlemen, well, it didn't start there. It actually hopefully ended there with George Floyd being murdered. And I don't use that word loosely, by police officer, a senior police officer, putting his knee in the throat, in the neck of George Floyd for about 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes, ended up dying, even though the guy was calling us saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. He still died right there under the man's knee. Give me your thoughts.
And it's important to note too that he's not the only, others are complicit in this, because you cannot stand by and allow it to happen and not be held accountable.
Absolutely.
So all 4 officers involved were charged. In fact, I saw an article that said while the memorial service was taking place, this was Friday, I think, yeah, just a few blocks away, the 3 other police officers, they were having their first appearance in court. And the judge gave them $1 million bond. $1 million. Yeah, it was lowered to 750,000, but even so, yeah, I unless they're extremely wealthy, yeah, they're going to be there for a while.
There's an argument out there, Shernet, that says that the other officers were subordinates of the officer who knelt in this guy's neck. What are their responsibilities, because they are following order? I mean, I know the humane part of their minds, but how does that play into them being charged?
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not an attorney.
We're having a discussion.
As far as I'm concerned, if the primary is being charged with second-degree murder, and you were there as accomplices, you're complicit. Number one, what he was doing was wrong. And orders, you don't follow orders just to follow them. That makes no sense. There has got to be, because I'm pretty sure if what he did was wrong and illegal, these officers should also be aware that what he's doing is illegal. You don't follow orders that are illegal, right?
Are you sure about that? Our military kind of dictate that if you don't follow the orders, you can lose your job.
Okay, so a job, you lose your job, but it's illegal. It's illegal. It's illegal. Illegal. And if he committed murder, what they did by standing around was also illegal.
We have a lot of those.
But I'm pretty confident that that's like, you and I are a part of a group, right? And if you're doing something that's unethical or illegal, and I'm like, okay, well, Leo says, does that mean that I'm held accountable to
I agree with you in a normal situation, because if me and you are out there and something happened, yeah, I can push your way and stuff. But under orders, military or police, law enforcement orders, it's kind of different, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Hopefully, when Judge Hemming come on, we can look at that, because I think that's going to be their argument in court.
No, and to me, that's absolutely rubbish, because if you're charging one party with murder, right? Mm-hmm. Then the others can say, hey, I knew he was committing murder, but he gave me an order. What am I going to do? Orders are orders. That's rubbish. That's rubbish, because what he did was illegal.
Tina Redwood says 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That's a long time.
46 seconds.
Oh my gosh. Bridget Smith Newman, good morning to you. Taylor Batten, good to hear about the small protest in Jamaica. It's small. That protest was small, but it was significant, because we had a lot of persons commenting on it, not just in Jamaica, but also in the diaspora. And it was very nice to see. Well, I was listening to someone last night, and Jamaica happens to be one of the, no, not one of the first countries, the first country in the Western Hemisphere to stand up against apartheid. This is not unusual for Jamaica to come out and stand up again. I mean, when Nelson Mandela left prison and became the president, the first place he went to was Cuba, and the next place was Jamaica. So he knows the value of Jamaica and its music, its food, and you know, Jamaicans go up against the big guys for the underdog all day long. It's just the way it is.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, because Jamaica is a first for a lot of things, and I'll happily share a couple with you. In 1957, the campaign against apartheid, Jamaica, while still a British colony, was the first country to declare a trade embargo against South Africa. In 1963, at the UN General Assembly, Jamaica proposed that 1968 be designated the International Year of Human Rights to mark the 20th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was accepted. Again, we're looking at 65. Jamaica contributed to the UN to the fall of illegal white minority regime in southern, what is now Zambia, southern Rhodesia. In 67, at the UN General Council, Jamaica's proposal for an international conference to review progress in the field of human rights was accepted. Again, in 68, Jamaica worked to bring the issue of apartheid in sports against the United Nations and helped to draft an international convention against apartheid in sports. I think I might have messed that up, but you get the idea. In 78, Jamaica's Michael Manley was among a group of eminent persons awarded the gold medals, too early, for distinguished service in the struggle against apartheid. Just two more. In 89, 23 policemen and women from Jamaica joined the United Nations Transitional Assistance Group, which is UNTAC, to support and supervise free election for Southwest Africa, which is now Namibia. And again in 1990, Jamaica supported efforts and assisted the United Nations in Haiti for peaceful and effective development of its electoral process. So it's now, 2020. So I'm just saying, Jamaica has been phenomenal. I mean, we know that from the beginning, tiny little country. And I love that the world is being phenomenal right now.
Well, they take notes of Jamaica, and a small country who's always standing up for the underdog, and I guess it's in our nature. It's that's who we are, Jamaicans, right?
They don't take nothing.
We don't let on take nothing. I mean, anywhere in the world that you want to go, they make fun of us all the time on aeroplanes, and just don't mess with us. We and they'll stand up for the underdog at all times. So we're happy to know that Jamaica is on the map, doing this normal regular thing. Want to say good morning to Donna Reed. Good morning to you. Susan Taylor Batten, Barbara Barrett. Good morning to you. Bridget Smith, Andrea Graham, Omar Pacifier. Long time no see, Omar. Good to see you back on the show. Want to welcome Dr. Grethel Bradford. And she is going to help us into looking at this whole disaster. Jamaica, not Jamaica, but the world has seen one big disaster from like February until now, and it's still going on in the pandemic. And then on top of it all, here we are with another disaster, right? And a third to come possibly, because we have the most aggressive hurricane season upon us very soon. But let's talk, Dr. Grethel Bradford, about George Floyd. No, let's not talk about George Floyd. Let's talk about the impact of George Floyd and the world. What do we need to do, Dr. Bradford, about bringing us back together? Is this a oneness, a show of support? Is it, we see a lot of looting and shooting and so forth. How do we make sure that we are back together, staying focused, protesting, but staying focused to the goal at hand?
Good morning, everybody. How are you?
Morning to you too.
Good morning, Gretel.
Oh, coffee.
To the smile, to the
Coffee.
smile.
Oh, you wake up.
Trying. Still not
But
there yet.
let me bust out some people here because this morning me call her, and me know so the reason why she not answer is because she didn't drink our coffee.
Gretel, don't get upset about it because I had to call him. Now everybody know.
Well, you see, you bust out on him too, right? There you go. But I had to drink my 16 ounces of water first.
Oh, Lord of mercy.
Yes, that's my I will get up now kind of thing, you know.
All right,
my
good.
16 ounces, then my coffee. Yeah.
What's going on?
So it is a very strange thing because when we look at what has happened over the last week and a half, it's hard to sort of define, first of all, what is happening. It's very hard to define it. But it's also easy to define it, right? If you look at it from a simple perspective, you have to look at historically what has happened to people of color. You have to look at that. You can't even ignore that. So we can start there. What has happened to us as people of color over an extended period of time? And you can also say, what has happened to those people who have caused the suffering of people of color over a period of time?
So it all started over in slavery, right? From slavery. We all feel
slavery.
Yes, okay.
It started from slavery. And I think when you look at the situation in the United States, it has been fermenting for a long time.
Yeah.
And over time, people have said, okay, we fought for freedom from slavery, then we fought for freedom from Jim Crow, and then we're still fighting every single day to stay alive.
I think you should tell us what Jim Crow is. You know, we're fighting from Jim Crow so that everybody in the world understands what Jim Crow is, what the Jim Crow laws were about.
So why don't you tell us what it was, Leo?
Okay, so we can just summarize it. Me no know, but
yeah, but
I did a paper.
In basic terms for me, and I'll let you explain what your paper said. Mm-hmm. It's a law that literally keeps people from moving from one status to the other. Whether it's
black people
and it's
black people
specifically.
That's exactly right.
If it was not a case of economic pressure, then it was a case of the other kind of social pressures and stuff, prejudice, discrimination, all of that.
Listen, what no white woman couldn't walk down the street hand in hand with a black man.
Oh no, it couldn't even be choice.
You couldn't even drink from the same water. Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
couldn't use the same bathroom.
Same bus.
It's the same thing like apartheid.
It was apartheid, pretty much, yeah.
Right. Yes. It literally is like apartheid in South Africa. So, but when they say the Jim Crow law, they're pretty it up. They're prettying it up.
I like to say the John Crow law.
John Crow, right? Yeah. And it's literally scavenging off the emotion and well-being of other people, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at that, you can look at smaller islands like Jamaica and the Caribbean and stuff, where the populace, and we have to always consider this, the population is different. So in Jamaica, you have predominantly people of color, right?
Yes.
And then you have Caucasian, smaller number of people, right? Yes. So we had to learn to live together, get together. We had to, regardless of whatever. But here, remember, if you look at the ratio of blacks to whites, it's the exact opposite, right? Yes. So the minority will always suffer, right? Unless you have a lot of money.
Yes.
And then you can be the minority that will serve, or you say it now, will thrive, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But when you literally put your foot on a person's neck, you put it on their hearts, you put it on their heads, you put it all over them, on their backs, everywhere. It's very hard for them to come out of it. And so this is what we have been seeing when we talk about, you know, the movement from slavery to where we are now.
Right.
And it's the pain that has been almost embedded in our DNA.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the pain and the anger and the frustration and all of that people of color have had to deal with, Black people specifically. And you know, sometimes, and right now we're just talking about Black people, but we're talking about people of color. We're talking about Native Americans. We're talking about people in this country who have been marginalized and pushed to the side, almost as if they don't exist. You know, you stay on your reservation, and if you dare come off your reservation, you will have us to deal with. So
that is exactly right.
You see, and you know, I remember years ago going to a conference on cultural linguistics and understanding different cultures. And I heard a Native American man stand up. I saw him stand up and he said, "I do not exist."
Wow.
And we were saying, "What?" He says, "I am not here." And we were sitting there sort of trying to figure it out. Then he finally said, "If in my tribe we get off our reservation, then because we don't have license, we don't have the right to have a driver's license. If we want a license, we stay on our reservation and we drive on we stay there. But if I have a child right now in Bethesda, Maryland, my child will not be registered.
No.
I have to take my child back to the reservation.
Yes.
All right. So when we heard that, we were really sort of frightened by it all. And so it's not just people of Black people, but it's just this pandemic of holding people who are different down. And so that's where we are.
You know, Dr. Grethel,
yes.
I don't like to make this into George, right? Because there are many other persons before George. There are many other
Georges and Georgettes and Georgianas.
Yes, on July 7th, 2014, there was a gentleman by the name of Eric Garner who died after he was wrestled to the ground by a New York police officer on suspicion of illegally selling cigarettes. All right? On August 9th, 2014, Michael Brown, who's 18 years old, was killed by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, who was responding to reports that Brown, who was not armed, had stolen a box of cigars. On November 22, 2014, Tamir Rice, 12 years old, was shot and killed in Cleveland, Ohio, by a police officer who, after reports of a male who was probably a juvenile pointing a gun at a probably fake gun at passersby, 12 years old. And guess what?
It was a fake gun.
It was a fake gun. And he got shot and killed. 4th of April, 2015, Walter Scott is shot and killed in the back 5 times by a white police officer who was later fired and eventually sentenced for 20 years. How many of these times did you see? Not very many. On the 5th of July, 2016, Alton Sterling. Death leads to days of protest in Baton Rouge. Mr. Sterling is killed after police responded to reports of a disturbance outside of a shop. He was killed. March 18th, 2018, Stephen Clark. I'm reminded of this, the name of my son, Stephen. This one is Stephen Clark, died after being shot at least seven times in Sacramento by police officers who were investigating a breakout. March 13, 2020, Breonna Taylor, 26 years old, emergency medical technician, was shot 8 times when officers raided her apartment in Louisville, Kentucky. 25th of May, and I'm going further, George Floyd dies after being arrested in Minneapolis and held down by officer who held his knee on this man's neck for over 8 minutes. And he last words, the words he was crying out to was, "I cannot breathe." The same guy in New York, Eric Garner, used the same words while he was being choke held with police officers. This is serious stuff. And how many of these police
Leo,
officers?
I mean, those are just a few. I mean, that's not even a drip in the bucket, you know, in terms of recent history too. It's just a horrible, nasty thing. But to what you said earlier, I mean, obviously people are moving forward in their thinking and coming together to try and find a solution. And we have to keep that going. We cannot be distracted. I don't think we should be distracted. We should continue on that path.
Dr. Neville Clark is on, yes, and I think he had something to share, and he popped back on. You can come back in now, Dr. Clark. Yes, you were saying.
I think when we look at it, there's going to be anger. There has to be anger, because I think people don't realize that anger, right, if correctly used, it can take you in a negative direction. That's negative. If it's properly used, it can be the key that will open the negotiations. Okay. And there's going to be a lot of negotiations. So when people are angry, we have to respect that.
Absolutely.
This is something that Black people walk and deal with. I walk into Saks Fifth Avenue and I am followed. I walk into Lords and Taylor and I'm followed. You don't know me. And while I am not looking at someone and saying, you know, your position as a sales clerk, you know, is any less than my position as a professor or a psychologist, you don't know me, but you assume that I am in here to steal something.
Absolutely.
Because of the color of your skin.
Because of the color of my skin. And it doesn't matter whether you're dressed up or not. It's just the color of the skin. You walk in and it's almost every aisle you go down, you see someone. And so you walk out of the store and the anger is there.
Yeah.
And the resentment is there. But then you have to also say it's an emotion. Okay?
It is.
It's an emotion. So what am I going to do with this emotion? Am I going to walk back into the store and create, or confront these people who are following me? Or do I just say to myself, you know what? Well, then you just lost some money.
But there are a lot of us who probably, if you think about it, do you actually just walk away and let it happen over and over and over again? You don't walk away. You can't walk away. You have to call the injustice for what it is. You can't run away from it. You can't act as if it's not there, because what it does is it ferments within you, right? Yes.
And you end up being hurt as much as, well, as a matter of fact, more than. When you can't express it, you end up getting hurt.
Yes.
Yeah. It is said that if you are angry, and I'm going to stop right now. If you are angry, right, for a minute, it impacts your immune system for 5 hours.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm in so much trouble.
Let me recognize some of our other guests. We have Dr. Neville Clark coming on, our pastor, the Dr. Neville Clark. He's in New Jersey. And also we have Dr. Beverly Gordon, looking fine and dandy. That's my friend, by the way. I don't know about anybody else. That's my new best friend now, BASTSIE. I saw it going on. All right, all right.
Don't make her uncomfortable, please.
Me not jealous. Me not jealous. They have 40 odd years.
No, see, Gretel, that's not the problem. The problem is poor Beverly knows, like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to be his best friend. What
Beverly.
do I do?
All right,
No.
Neville, please go ahead. I know that you've been burning to say something, so please tell us what your thoughts are.
Well, first of all, I need to know where you are in the discussion.
Oh, no, I was talking Neville. I was saying Neville.
Oh, sorry.
Not Beverly.
Sorry.
So Beverly, Neville, go ahead. Neville.
Oh, I think it's probably
you gotta fix your audio there, Neville. Beverly, we are at the point where we're talking about all the effects of George Floyd. We talked a little bit, well, a whole lot about the world effect, the Jamaica effect, the effect on our personal being, and Dr. Gretel just pointed out that she had an experience, or she's had experiences where she's walked into stores and people, just by virtue of her color, they think that she's coming in to be a thief, to steal something, and so they start watch her and walk around back her. You know, I've had that so often. You know, it's unbelievable. Go ahead, Neville. We're still not hearing you, so you got to turn up your audio. Beverly, go ahead.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the whole experience of being Black.
Yes, no, go ahead. We're hearing you, Beverly.
The whole experience of being Black is an interesting one, because I often say that if I hadn't left my original country, Jamaica, I might never have known what it actually feels like to deal with being Black. Yeah, but my first experience of being Black was in England when I was about 10 years old. And there was a little girl, I'll never forget her name, Virginia. Virginia used to sit behind me, and my mom used to put my hair in pigtails. And Virginia used to sit behind me and pull my hair and call me Black bastard. Oh. And I was offended, not so much about the Black, but because she called me a bastard. And I'm a Jamaican. So to me, I was a lawful child. So I was kind of mad with her. And that was my first experience of actually being Black. Before that, I'd never really thought about it. And then being in this country, in the United States for over 40 years, I've really got to understand that I'm Black. And I have to tell you that this whole issue that's been going on over the past 11 days, starting with the killing of George Floyd, has really erupted certain emotions within me that I had to deal with on a very serious level, but I had to look at it from different aspects. I saw it from a mother's aspect. I saw it from a Christian's perspective. I saw it from a Jamaican's perspective. And I saw it finally simply as from a Black woman's perspective.
Tell me about the Christian perspective. Can you please help us?
Yeah, I'll tell you about the Christian perspective. Because interestingly enough, the general view of Christians is that we're supposed to just kind of roll over and die and turn the other cheek, So there are these guilt feelings when you don't feel like rolling over and turning the other cheek. So first you have to deal with your pain, your hurt, your anger, your frustration, and at the same time, this nagging feeling that you're supposed to forgive. And so I had to deal with that. And I got to the conclusion finally that I do forgive. But see, forgiveness for me simply means that I am no longer going to function from blind, uncontrolled rage. But now I have to function from reason that tells me that it is unreasonable for one human being to look at another human being and think that they're less than a human being because of the color of their skin. So first of all, because the Bible tells me that I need to practice justice, I find that this is unjust. And therefore, I find that because it is unjust, I have a Christian responsibility to do something about it.
Oh boy,
So
that's powerful. This is powerful.
I'm not
Yeah.
rolling over and turning another cheek. What I'm doing is say, understanding and acknowledging that these individuals function from a sin perspective where the image of God has been obliterated in them. And so it is possible for them to commit such atrocities. So I acknowledge that, and therefore I forgive them for their foolishness and their ignorance. But I don't condone their ignorance and their foolishness and their actions. Therefore, I will take whatever steps I can to improve the conditions for Black people of whom I am one. And so that's my Christian perspective.
Oh, I love it too.
I love that. I love that, Beverly. You know why I love that? Because when you historically, if you look at it, religion, God, Jesus have been used by these oppressors to keep Black people and other races down. They have misconstrued and twisted, and used it in the name of Jesus, in the name of God. They have used it to punish people for being different. And I was listening, I cannot remember her name, but I was listening to this really powerful speaker the other day, and she said, listen, at the end of the day, I don't even know why people are, and she's white, why are people talking about color? Believe it or not, we're all Black. That's where we all started, and if you go all the way back, people were always colored. That's the history of human beings. That's where we started. So because you have no lost, the pigmentation of your skin, that does not entitle you to own other people and to feel like you're better than.
It doesn't even matter what characteristic people use to inflict oppression on other people. It's the underlying principle that no human being is better than another human being. So therefore, wherever you see injustice, because, like, for example, there was a video that's come out after the George Floyd killing. There's a video of a 75-year-old white man who was pushed down on the pavement by policemen. He fell to the ground, hit the back of his head. He was lying there bleeding. And one of the policemen, with some compassion in him, kind of turned to try to help him. And the others pulled him away like, let's go, man, we got things to do. While this 75-year-old man is lying on the ground bleeding. That's injustice. And I think that as Christians, anywhere that we see injustice, it is our responsibility to do something about, because Jesus was a perfect example of who God is, and he did not tolerate injustice. So I
want to take that on a little bit, but I want to recognize Pastor Judge Norman Hemming, and I'm going to put you on the spot because there's a little conflict here.
There is no conflict.
There's a little conflict here, Judge Hemming, where there, if you listen to Beverly, Dr. Beverly, right? And if you listen to the news about the gentleman who had his neck, his knee in the gentleman's neck, there were 3 other officers who got charged.
Right.
And those 3 officers are subordinates. And their argument gonna be in court that they had to obey or respect the rank of the gentleman who, or their superior, who had his knee in their neck, in the gentleman's neck. And Beverly's point is saying, we need to understand and reason and reason out justice. How do you put these two together? Because if I am a subordinate and I'm on a call and my superior says stand guard and block and block everybody from coming here, I am putting my knee in this person's neck. What do you do? How do you treat that in our judicial system?
Right. So it's interesting. Thank you so very much for having me on the show. Both of you having me on the show today. It's interesting. We had a similar situation back in late 1930s through 1945, and we had a trial after the end of World War II. It was called the Nuremberg trial. Mm-hmm. And in fact, what was said at the Nuremberg trial, the defense that was raised, was that we were just following orders. That's what all the military leaders said. We were following the orders that we had been given. listen, the courts, the Nuremberg courts soundly rejected that, as we soundly reject that today in United States jurisprudence. Two of the men who were supporting Derek Chauvin were his subordinates. They were trainee officers. One of the other officers who was on scene was actually a co-equal to Derek Chauvin. But those two officers, listen, if you're walking down the street, Leo, and you see, but while you're walking down the street, you see one of the brothers of, let's just for argument's sake, one of the brothers of your fraternity. Let's say you're in this fraternity called Tau Tau Tau, and you are online for that fraternity, and you're walking down the street, and you notice one of the brothers in your fraternity kicking this young lady on the side of the street to move her out of the way so that you can walk past. And you are more concerned with making it into the fraternity than with doing what is right and what is righteous. And that's the problem that we have today. But I'm so happy and I'm encouraged and excited that we're seeing that more and more police departments. Just yesterday, the Association of Police, Chiefs of Police here in Broward County came together, and they said, listen, we're going to take all efforts to make sure that we weed out from among our ranks those who would seek to do wrong. I think the justice system in America has gotten a huge wake-up call, and you're going to see a lot of changes taking place. Just like Nuremberg rejected it, that you couldn't say I was following orders. Similarly here, we're saying you can't just say you're following orders. You're a human first. But more importantly, as I think the other panelists will tell you, you're a Christian first.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Neville Clark, are you back yet? Can we? I can't hear you. We can't hear you. I'm not so sure why we're not hearing you. Oh my. Gretel, your thoughts, because you haven't spoken since these other persons came on. So let's hear you.
Specifically on what, Leo? What aspect of it?
Oh no, we were just talking about the Nuremberg trial and
okay.
Yeah, speak on that.
Okay, yes. So my thing is that, I started off with the anger, right? And I'm kind of like focusing on that because I believe that when we are angry, it can propel us to greater things, right? But we also have to remember that in our anger, what is it that we really want to achieve? What is it? And we have seen the nation move from this place of, we really want, we don't care, to the place where they are peacefully demonstrating now, where they're saying that we have to logically and consistently and persistently keep this in the forefront, okay? And that helps us as human beings to come to decisions, because what it does is it's forcing those people in power to say, oh, well, we can't go by the saying that they're all hooligans and they're all, out there to riot and they're all out there to threaten your families and your homes and whatever. These people are saying every single race, every single creed, people are saying, we are going to be here and we're going to be up in your face until you do it. My concern is it, and Dr. Hemming, my concern is, how do we keep the momentum? How do we do that so that it doesn't become one of those cases that you talked about earlier, Leo? It happened and then it just got swept under the rug. Yes. And say, for example, that young lady who had her birthday yesterday, 27 years old, right? Mm-hmm. It happened. There was an outcry. Now there is nothing, right? And the only reason why we hear this is because a week ago, another of our people was killed.
One good thing here, Dr. Gretel, is that the peaceful protest is not just Black people out there on the streets.
Right, and that is the key.
Yes, and here goes. I remember I quoted this morning the Reverend Martin Luther King. And he
Yes.
said in one of his speeches, injustice anywhere
It's a threat.
as a threat to justice everywhere.
Everywhere.
And I tell you this, that I like that. It just is like he had a perception that's more than anybody in this world, because we are looking at the exact example of what this is. One man who's not necessarily the best in these terms of his criminal behavior in the past, one man has caused an eruption of the people around him, the people in his community, the people in America, the people in Jamaica, in Russia, in Germany, in Africa. And this is what it's all about. It's no longer about George Floyd. It's about all the oppressiveness and the oppression that we have lived through, not just about slavery, but just anybody who's been oppressed in the world. This is what it's about, isn't it, Beverly?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the things that's striking to me too, because this is a worldwide issue. Not only is oppression an issue here in the United States of America for Black people, but it is an issue for Black people around the world and for people in general. And the interesting thing is that we have a generation now that are not afraid to stand up and speak up, even for people who are not within their social group or racial group or whatever. We have a generation, a younger generation, who are very conscious of differences and are more accepting of differences. And these folks, they're not willing to sit down and shut up, because typically over the years, we've been told how to respond, when to respond, and that kind of thing. And this generation is saying, no, we're not sitting down until we get what we want. And I love them.
Beverly,
it's so interesting.
It's so interesting, Beverly, because I saw yesterday, this young man holding up a sign, right? And his sign said, I canceled my mother over this. So he was actually talking to a reporter, and the reporter asked him, what do you mean by that? And it was a white young man, and he was bawling. He was like, I had a conversation with my mother, and she's saying that the looting is wrong and everything. And he's like, it's bigger than that. It's not even about that. It is about the injustices. Why do people have to go through this? And he was crying. And I'm pretty sure that, she was not saying it was wrong. All of it was wrong. But for him, it was huge.
Here's Neville. Neville, are you there?
Statement that was huge.
Neville. Neville, I think we lost him again. We have a new. I'm going to take you real quickly, Rev, Pastor. We have Sophia Elaine Jackson Nicholson something, all kind of names. Are you there, Sophia?
You're muted, Sophia.
Yeah, unmute yourself. There you are.
I should be muted. I'm here to listen. Hi, how is everybody doing?
Hi.
My apologies. I'm looking at my time in South Florida, and it's 9:43 a.m. I said I'm early.
That's all right. That's all right. That's unlike Jamaica.
Well, this is it. Jamaica is an hour difference. I woke up, I said, I'm going to meet Leo at 10, my sweetheart. So please excuse me. And my husband, I saw something pop up and he said, oh, meeting started. Oh, dear. So here I am. Just wake up. Excuse me. I'm here to listen. Go ahead, folks. Nice to see you all.
Oh, great.
Wonderful.
Go ahead, Pastor Hemmings.
Yeah, you're asking, someone was asking, how do we continue this? Yes. So it's greater than just the police departments. There are over 18,000 policing agencies in the United States, but it's greater than that because it's institutionalized racism. So one is that we're gonna have the pressure put on with respect to the 21st policing plan that had come out of the Obama administration that needs to take place at the local and municipal, at the state and municipal levels, right? So we need all these mayors, all these state legislators to put in place this 21st century policing initiative with respect to policing, but it's greater than just policing. At the same time, we have to have, there's a situation with the Secret Service of the United States, the US Secret Service, where the overwhelming majority of people who are in it are Irish. And people say, well, oh, this is clearly discrimination. Well, guess what? It's normal. And I'll tell you why it's normal. And what this movement is going to do to that is that it's normal that if you have two people who come in for the interview, one of them is named Mr. O'Shaughnessy, and the other one is named Jamal Bryant. Both of them have the exact same resume, and if you are Irish, you're gonna go with Mr. O'Shaughnessy every time, just like you Jamaicans, right? If the two people come in, right? One is from one of the persons happens to be from Mexico, and the other person is from Jamaica. Their resumes are exactly the same. They have the same background. The normal instinct of you is to just hire the person that is most familiar to you and that you are most familiar with. Well, what this thing does is that it upends all of that. And how you continue this is that you start making conscious efforts to reach out to more than just your tiny insular set of people and parameters that's in your head. Right? And you make intentional decisions in hiring in the business sector, intentional decisions with respect to criminal justice, reform, intentional decisions with respect to education, how scholarships are given out, intentional decisions with respect to how people are admitted to college, that in every facet, in religion, in every area, when you're teaching your Sunday sermon, then and you're talking about the early church fathers, Origin and others, then you need to tell your people, listen, by the way, they were located in North Africa. That's where they literally were. So you have to be intentional in how you teach so that everyone feels included, so that people don't feel as if I am other. And it doesn't become easy for everyone else to say, oh no, we don't have to focus on them because they're the other.
Yes. Go ahead.
Leo, can I say something here?
Yeah, man. Yes.
In our discussion also, I was listening to a great psychologist talk last night. She's a white psychologist. And she pointed out that, and I don't think we can move away from this without talking about white privilege. Okay? We cannot, and we don't have to see it as something that we're going to be like angry about. We have our children for years and years, decades, centuries, have been socialized to feel that Black is bad and white is right, okay? And so, and it's the little things, you know, when your child comes, for example, years ago, I used to work in a daycare center. And every time this baby saw us, we are the caregivers, right?
Yes.
They would cry. And we couldn't figure out why the baby would cry like this. And the mother said, oh, she's never been around Black people before. And my thought was, this is different. The child is at the stage where she's supposed to experience stranger anxiety. It's normal. There's every time you at a certain age, a year and a half, you're going to look at people and wonder, who are they? Am I safe with them? Right? I think it's about 9 months, right, Bev? About 9 months or so. Yeah. And up to about a year and a half. And so what that parent says to that child is going to be important. Right? How do you have the child to say, no, you're safe, you're so-and-so, and whatever is going to be important. Because if the parent says, well, I can't stay where all these Black people are, I have to take her back to a daycare where only white people are, and her caregivers are only white, then that is embedded in the child's memory. Right? Yes. And so, and there's so many little things, you know, where do our children go when they see us in the park and they look at us and they are wondering, why are they different? You know, why do they look? What do we say to them? Because that's important.
So
right?
we broke all rules in this particular drive. Let me show you why. I have seen something that I have never seen in this country in the 35 years that I've lived here, right? I see police chiefs, police officers coming out against things that they normally don't do. I saw a police officer in Texas, he's not an officer, he was the chief of police, come out and spoke very nicely about injustices in this day. And I'm saying, is Is this for certain? Did you just put on a uniform and he's not really a police officer? You know, he's just out there in a police officer's uniform. He stole it somewhere because he's gonna go back and somebody's going to fire him. That's what I keep saying. Somebody's gonna fire him. And then I saw another thing where I have 5 different police officers talking about injustice. I'm saying, wait. Are we changing here? Is this what's going on? Talk to me.
You know what it speaks to, Leo? It also suggests to me that they themselves were feeling oppressed and were not given a voice. And perhaps they were having an internal struggle in their units, trying to say this is wrong. And because up here was saying you're doing it this way, it was a challenge for them. So it's a good thing. And I love that everybody has decided we're not being silent anymore.
Never.
I also think that these last few incidents that have come one after the other, and then what happened with George Floyd, it felt like the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
You know, the cup was full. Our cup was full and running over. And we just basically said, enough, we can't take this anymore. And I believe that individuals who are, say, for example, in the police force, and say that they're Black or they're maybe Hispanic, some form of minority, perhaps they've been struggling with the conflict between what they're seeing and they know it's wrong. And it's going against something that is organic to them. But then they felt as if because they had to follow orders, you know, and toe the line, they didn't feel comfortable to speak out. But this thing got so big, it was so oppressive. And this last straw that broke the camel's back, they just kind of broke loose.
You're right.
Never,
and Beverly, one thing I'll also say, if you look at it, the timing could not have been better because the world was at home watching.
Yes.
People working. It was
captive audience.
Neville, are you there?
Are
you there, Neville?
Sophia, you're absolutely right.
Oh, there you are. Oh, you're finally here. Oh my God, he is alive.
What is it that Leo drank this morning? Leo, he's here. He only put his little icon, the phone icon, because probably he didn't put on any makeup. That's all. So we understand. Neville is there. It's okay, Neville.
Go ahead, Sophia.
Yes, so I was agreeing with you. My daughter was so concerned about what happened, and she came literally crying and saying, Mom, this has touched her and many of her friends. And, you know, she's from the millennial group, just so you know. And it just concerned her to a level that she feels helpless just observing. And she says, Mom, how can police who are sworn to uphold the law and to protect is then the persons who are the ones committing the crime? And I said, Brittany, it has to start from the top. I think Judge Hemming mentioned it earlier, where systemically it's there. If you are in a group of workers, I gave her simple examples. You're working in an organization and you become the outlier, the person who sees things happening, but you feel helpless because the head condones it. So until the head is addressed, this will not change. So I said, Brittany, they were following their orders. And you mentioned that, Judge Hemming, they're following, not that it's correct, but they themselves feel so oppressed and they were trying to save their job. They have their families, and I'm not making excuses. I'm saying, Brittany, understand, until they build the backbone to stand up and say, lose my job or not, I'm not gonna condone this. But now they feel a little more empowered because the rallying cry is so unanimous. They feel a little bit better and easier to speak out against it. I just watched an interview, I'm not sure, I'll probably send it to you, Leo.
Yes.
Where they were asked, there was a group of minority policemen being asked, I'm not sure you missed that interview.
I saw
How did you feel? You saw it? That explains it. Yes. They were told, go out and make sure you do this and they're following orders, even against their will, but they want the little money to pay for their family's mortgage and their coverings and all that, which is as sad as it is. It is absolutely sad. So until that's fixed, my friend, we could talk here till we're blue in the face. Racism exists and it's an individual perception, just like the baby. The baby was not crying because a person was dark. She was just crying because it's a stranger. Listen to what the mother said. Oh, she's not used to Black. What is the mother teaching the child? That is where it's a taught behavior. Absolutely. And until that's changed, we'll never end this discussion.
Hold your thought.
1 minute before you go. My friend went to get a house and the dog was barking. And the lady said, oh, he's not used to black. The dog is not used to black people. The woman is the racist, not the dog. The dog saw a stranger. So my friend took her back and said, no, this house is not for me. I'm telling you. So continue, Leo.
No, I really want to bring Neville Clark in.
Yes.
I've been trying for 1 hour. Neville, are you there?
Neville.
I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Neville.
Yes, good morning to everyone.
Yeah,
Morning, sir.
It's such an experience that I have had over these past few days, and I am kind of a burning up on the inside, in the sense that we are in a society where this prejudice that has been promulgated, and it has been very, very productive according to our white brothers. We are in a country where it should be equal justice. Now, I am talking from a Christian perspective because I'm a biblical person. And I recognize that somewhere along the line, there are bits of information that supports slavery during the Old Testament or the Old Covenant period. But once things were changed in the New Testament part of it, one of the greatest orators in the New Testament, whose name was Paul, and he abhorred slavery completely. Now, I have a little knowledge in regards to the history of the United States of America, in regards to the fact that at one point, this country was just a base for England. Now that George Washington and his men, they have gotten together and they fought for the Declaration of Independence from Britain, but at the same time, slavery was still promulgated. Now that we have reached a point where blacks were now liberated, they were now able to vote, to make decisions, the chain that has been on the feet of our black brothers and sisters as they were shipped from Africa via the Triangular Passage and dropped off in different places in the Americas and in the Caribbean. We have seen that the chains are not on our feet, but mentally, there is a great strain on the neck of our brothers and sisters. Now, our Jamaican brother, Bob Marley, he said, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Now, it's very difficult. How are we going to emancipate ourselves when our oppressors are the majority? I stood up the other day and I was grieved over what I saw, in the sense that my brother was on the ground, he was crying for his mother. Whenever a grown man cried for his mother, it means that he now comes back to a stage on a position of helplessness. And yet nobody came to his rescue. Now, I believe that there is a great awakening, though. I don't know exactly what is going to come out of this, whether there is going to be a reform, but let me hope that reform is in the making, because we cannot live like this. Now, what I want to bring to the masses is the whole settings of what the generation is all about, because this race thing that is really dividing humanity. Now, I go back to history, all the way back, and there were only two people on the face of this earth, and the whole generation came through these two individuals. Now, I believe that what has happened recently, it has created a microcosm and an impulse that has awakened the masses, because as you notice that the world is involved. Now, what are we going to do in order to make sure that what is happening sticks to the mind of the white oppressors? There are some things that I saw happen, which, I am not really in agreement, because I saw the destruction of business places. And when I analyzed the whole situation, it was the small businesses many of the small businesses in those rural areas were being destroyed. Now, if that is to continue, then where we are concerned as the minority, we will still be suffering because it's going to be a starting point all over again.
Totally.
But I
totally agree with your points there. I wanted to get Pastor Hemming's thought. He had his hand. See me, he might try to put up his hand and he might take it down and know when to come in and stuff. So I want to give him a chance to speak. Thank you so much, Devil. Go ahead.
No. This is so exciting, and I'm glad for that. And one of the things though is that not only do we need to educate and change the folks who don't look like us, we also need to change ourselves.
Yes.
But one of the sad things is, and I don't know if people will agree with me, but walking down the street late at night and in certain neighborhoods, and if you hear footsteps behind you and you look behind and you notice that it's 3 young black men walking behind you, you're tense and you start wondering whether or not you're going to be robbed. But if you hear the footsteps behind you and you look behind you and you notice that it's 3 white men behind you, you breathe a sigh of relief, which is so foolish. But what it means is this, that institutionalized racism, systemic racism, is so real that it even confuses those of us who are of the people, who are the subject of it.
Yes,
we ourselves have, seriously.
Yes.
So it's so important for us not only to keep the pressure on to change the hearts and minds of whites and others in the society, but also to change our own minds and to re-educate our children.
Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Let me ask you this. One second. Let me stay right there on that point. In reality,
yes,
those 3 black men,
yes,
may have been criminals. Is it possible that you might be saying that there's a 50% chance that they are criminals and there's 50% chance that they are not criminals?
It's the same chance.
It's the same chance. Right. How do you, as the person walking, tell me.
So I used to be that idiot, right? That used to get scared when I looked behind and I saw the 3 black men behind me as 3 white men. And it was interesting. So I went as a part of the Department of Justice team. We were having a national meeting in Atlanta, Georgia. So a lot of us in executive positions with the Department of Justice from all over the nation came together there. And so I'm dressed in a suit with a DOJ pin on, right?
Yes.
I get to get to the elevator of this hotel. And as I get out the elevator, there's a Caucasian woman standing in the elevator. She immediately clutches her bag and she starts crying. Now, I'm dressed in a suit. This hotel is crawling with FBI agents and us as attorneys, right? As executives with the Department of Justice. And she's scared that this black guy in a suit, is about to rob her. And then I realized, listen, I'm no better than she is. I'm just as stupid, right? Because every time I cringe when I see the 3 black guys behind me, I'm just as dumb because I've been miseducated in the same way that she has been miseducated. So it's important for us to,
I'm gonna give me 1 second, Leo. Can I give you this twist to that?
Yes.
Walking and I see the 3 white men behind me.
Right.
What was my education? That I think they're gonna be serious.
You're in trouble.
you see how it's all, my friends, it starts with what you're taught.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I reject that because they're black, they're gonna hurt me. You know what? I'll turn to them and say, well, go on.
Right.
Yes.
I'll turn and say, hey, what's up? Because that to me is my brother. How you were trained, because if you read the stories in books that we have read before we migrated here, white people with blue eye were scary.
Wow.
They were scary people, they were serial killers, so it's all about what you have been taught. So this is it, and that is the change. And Mr. Hemming, just so you know, you're not the only one who somebody clutched a purse. You know who they clutched a purse against? You guys know it. One of our big basketball players who not need $1 in our purse. Align yourself with the millionaires that are black, my friend. And you want to
So right.
all your thought, yeah?
Sophia, I immediately when you said that, I remembered Oprah. I think she was in France some time back and she went into a store and she was being followed around because she's black. They had no idea who she was. She could have probably bought the whole store and handed it back to them as a gift.
That's right.
So she was followed.
And she was incognito. She never dressed right. If you see Oprah without makeup, you'll clutch your bag. But it's all right.
Correct. Yeah. You know,
That's
Neville,
my friend.
Neville talked about you know, the looting and rioting. And I just want to share this, and this is my perception, that it's not all the time is the people out there protesting causing the problem. Sometimes they're planted for the whole system to be corrupted. If the I'm not going to say, but I think the philosophy is, listen, join. If you don't like the message, disrupt it, cause problem, make them look bad.
Want to recognize Dr. Dwayne Dice, the new chair of the Jamaica Diaspora Education Task Force, and I'm sure he's been here listening, so you can just jump in and share your thoughts.
Well, I'm drinking black coffee this morning.
Oh, you know, I was about to think that I'm drinking rum, and you know, you can't start out with that right there. You have to say coffee, please. You know,
it's important to coffee.
As Shornet would say, nobody knows what's in the cup. All right, so but good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody's smiling faces. But I want to say that I'm very happy everything like this is happening. It's sad that somebody else had to die for this. But, you know, back to the Christian days, we talk about a sacrificial love and Jesus offering himself up for the world. So it takes one man to another man, you know, in the chain of deaths, for somebody to start recognizing that this is a serious problem. So from an educational perspective, I would say we really need to start reforming the books. We need to change the history books. We need to tell the truth for what it is. Because a lot of these books, when I was growing up, I was treated with racism, but I didn't know it was racism and classism. And because based on what every one of you have said before on the program so far, it's because we're educated in such a way that you don't even know. You thought that was your place, and because of the color of your skin, you would look at yourself and wonder, okay, maybe that's where I'm supposed to be, you know. So you pull back in your shell, and you know a whole lot of things, and you're thinking, and you just say, I'm not gonna share because that's not my place. When that was a while back, 1999, I remember, I never forget this. We were at a church service in Jamaica, and it was a summer camp put on by the church. And we were just mingling. There were some people from Louisiana. They came down to support the camp and so on. And we're just mingling with them. And I remember my brother and I walked over to some of them and we were just talking. You know, it's good to speak English with these people. And you know, move away from the patois and exercise ourselves, you know, English-wise. And this guy, Jamaican guy, he's older now. I think he's still alive. He said to me and my brother, Jamaican language, cockroach no business in a fowl fight. And we asked him, what does that mean? And he said, we need to take away ourselves. So we walk off, and my brother was very angry. He's very aggressive. He's very angry. And I really applaud him for that, because he started cursing. And when we walked back, and I pulled him away, I said, come on, because this is not our fight. It's not our fight. But it's later on when we started sharing it with some people, what the guy was actually saying is that this is not you. You're not a part of this. You're from a different class.
Yes, yes.
You know,
yes,
the class is that, yeah.
And you know, I wanted to put Pastor Hemming on notice here for a minute, because we didn't do a good job of talking about the Jim Crow laws earlier, did we? I mean the Jim Crow laws, you know, earlier, and I know that Crow was a good word. Jim Crow.
You're right. Jamaicans call it drunk or business. Yeah.
So I want.
Which law was that again? Then I remember.
So I want to put him on this one because I know that he did in-depth studies on the Jim Crow laws, and I want him to set the pace here for us to understand what is going on in America and where this all come from, and and why we have to be dealing with this thing right now.
So it's interesting with respect in particular to our police departments. So the first police department that we think of in the United States, and by the way, it's the same in Jamaica. We can talk about that another time if you'd like. But in 1707, we saw the formation of the first police department, and they were really formed to capture slaves, to capture runaway slaves. Then in the year 1838 in the city of Boston, so that was in the South that we saw them organized to capture slaves. In 1838, where it started in the north of the United States, in Boston, they came together to protect business interests, to protect the commercial interests. And so what we saw develop over time is that the origin of these organizations, of these policing entities, impacted the culture of the entities, all right? So much so that it carried on to today. Similarly in Jamaica, the Jamaica Constabulary Force, after Paul Bogle, we saw that there was a dramatic shift in how it was organized and what it was directed towards in Jamaica. But here in the United States, that was their purpose. And so what happened is that this insidious racism that was a part of the formation of these forces, even here in Miami and in South Florida, persisted. And what you had going on is that this racism carried on right into the present day through the Jim Crow laws, where after slaves were set free, these police departments were set up to make sure that these slaves continued to work for free on the plantations and did not try to solicit or to try to get any additional benefits or rights that they were entitled to in the United States. And then there became this whole discussion about whether or not the policing agencies were guardians of society and the various people in society, or were they warriors protecting the interests of the moneyed classes against these rummaging, pillaging poor. And so that came to a head in 2015 with the murder of Michael Brown. And that's what was a genesis for the 21st century policing plan that the Obama administration came out with. And so when you see police officers today, chiefs of police today, talking about the fact that they're taking a knee and they're going to be rooting out bad apples within their agency, what has happened is that all that has happened is that the side of the argument that said that we are guardians and not warriors, that we are not against the people of the nation, right, has, as a result of this George Floyd incident, they now have the upper hand. Their voices are being multiplied and are being heard because the society and the powers that be are encouraging them.
That's what I'm saying.
To stand up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's going on.
Yes.
It's not, don't think it's magic that you see these.
It's not. It's not. And you know what? The fundamental basis of racism and why it took so long to get to this point, right, it's the economics of it.
You got it. You got it, sister. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You're going to say, go ahead.
Leo.
Yeah, man, go ahead.
To what police is in my mind and what I'm reading. The police are a constituted body of persons empowered by a state with the aim to enforce the law, to ensure the safety, health, and possessions of citizens, and to prevent crime and civil disorder. So the part that interests me is to protect and, of course, to enforce the law. Putting a knee on somebody's neck is not part of no form of no law, because if I've used a pillow and put over George's face and stuff him out, I just committed a crime. So they have it all misconstrued. That's policing, period.
Yes.
You're correct, Sophia. You're absolutely correct.
Give me your thoughts, Beverly, because you've been quiet.
No, I've been learning a lot actually, and finding people's comments very interesting. I mean, the history helps us to understand the present. And I wonder how we're going to use the past and the present to affect the future. Because right now we have a momentum in what's happening now. But we've talked in general, most people have mentioned, you know, the influence of the home, the influence of the law, the legal system, the systemic forces, and what have you. What are we going to do as individuals to effect change for the future? And I look at the division that exists even among us as Black people here in the United States. I look at the fact that some of us were brought here, or our forefathers were brought here hundreds of years ago. I look at some of us came in as immigrants later on, and we all have not necessarily formed a united front. So I'm thinking that one of the things that needs to happen is that we need to come together in solidarity as a people, not as a divided people. So that will give us strength, because what somebody made an example yesterday on one of the shows that I was watching about the Jewish people, for example, in this country. They have a united system that they provide for each other, they support each other, they have it's almost like a little nation within a nation. So I'm not saying we need to become isolated in that way, but I'm saying that we need to come together in some kind of solidarity so that we're not pulling each other down. We're helping each other up. We're supporting each other in the way that will allow each Black person to make progress, and that we are self-sustaining. There's on July 7th, I believe, is supposed to be a blackout date when we're supposed to not be spending not even a red cent in the system. But I think it needs to go beyond that. Right now, when I look at some of the ways that we as Black people support the larger economy, I'm thinking that instead of doing that so much, we need to build our own systems and our own economic structures, so that we are self-sustaining, so that we don't have to say, yes, please, sir, thank you, sir. We can say, I got my own.
Yeah, but I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Who's that? Neville? Oh, you, okay. I'm going to take you in a minute, Prof. And then Griffin.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, it starts from education. It starts from informal education in the home. And as Dr. Gordon said, that we have to continue the momentum, build on it. And we also have to be careful too, because we don't want to lord it over one racial group over another, where the pendulum swing to the other side, and then everybody else, because of what their forefathers did, they're evil, all the way down to here. So we have to be very careful that we swing the pendulum and allow it to settle right in the middle, so that everyone will benefit from every opportunity.
Understand.
But they need to stop pinning racial classes and everything else on economic benefits. Anytime they stop that, then we'll have a firmer ground to settle on.
And this is the beginning of that fight, Dwayne. You're absolutely right. This is the beginning of that fight.
And the other point I want to make with where that is concerned is to accept what diversity is. Diversity is not having 5 different people in a room with different racial background. That's not diversity. Diversity digs deeper than that. Diversity is an ideology that is different from every single person in that room. It's not about color of skin or educational background or culture or different society. Diversity is not that. Diversity is what are you and who are you? That's what it is. When you come into a room, what are you sharing? And if we can gel together like the rainbow and we're not separating any color, that is diversity.
Great.
That is it.
Let me. I'm going to take Pastor Hemming, then Grethel, and then Pastor Clark. So just go in that order so that we don't feel like we're talking over each other. So for now, just go ahead.
So I wanted to go to a narrow focus just for a second, because it was raised earlier with respect to within the Black community and divisions within the Black community. That's relatively a recent construct, right? So our forefathers were very different, right? When you think about somebody like a Marcus Garvey and the impact that he had on people of African heritage throughout the world, in Brazil, in Haiti, in other 54 nations on the continent of Africa, here in the United States and throughout the Caribbean. This recent construct of us versus them within the Black community is something new. In fact, Malcolm X, he comes out of a background of being from, his mom is from Grenada. He's a Caribbean national, but he was at the forefront of leading change in the United States of America. Listen, almost every major leader that you can think of has some nexus, some relationship to somewhere in the Caribbean and elsewhere outside of the United States. So when you see today, as our generation, it seems, have spent so much time dividing ourselves and saying, well, these Haitians are not us. These Trinis are not us. These Black Americans, clearly not us. They are, it's an ahistorical position, right? Because all of us came over on the same ships. We might have been dropped off at different ports, but it's your cousin that was dropped off here. They're no less or no better or no worse than you are. So we have to come together. I see you have the Jamaican flag flying behind you there, Leo, and yeah, power to the people. It's interesting. One of the last book that Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote before he was killed was where do we go from here? Chaos or community. He wrote that book in Ocho Rios in Jamaica. You see, that generation had a very different outlook for what it meant to be Black. What it meant to be Black had nothing to do with the shore on which you were born. It had more to do with this sense of culture and identity, right? Which is greater than what we have today, unfortunately, because we're so insular today. So I'm so glad for this situation, sadly, with George Floyd, because it's bringing us together once again.
Greta.
So I'm going to drop a little bit of sour into the sweet, all right? You know, we just came out of the pandemic and we've seen the effect of the pandemic. And what I have been doing all of this week is comparing what has happened to people in terms of their being unable to survive, you know, being locked away, you know, the social isolation. As people of color, we have been isolated. We have felt the unsurety, the uncertainty of you know what is going to happen next, and so on. And so if I put them together, the two pandemics together, and I want to say that racism isn't going anywhere. It isn't. So let's be honest about that. There are always going to be people who will demonstrate racism towards other people, who will always see you as different from me. And we also have to look back at that and say, you know, that was a part of our ancestors' survival mechanisms, right? Where the other was different and was a threat, and I had to protect my kind. So what do we do then? We have to now teach our children that yes, you are different. Yes, you look different. But you, just like Pastor Clark said, we came from the same two people, right? We came from the same two people. And because we went to different places and the environment was different, we look different, right? Over the years and stuff. But no, it's not going away. And what we have to do is teach our children, teach our grandchildren, let them sit and watch it and explain to them the historical part. Like, you know, Pastor Hemming, Dr. Hemming was saying, let's look at that. Let's do the historical part of it. Let's also put the present in its context and then put the future in the context as well. So bring it all together, past, present, and future, and give our children hope. We have to give them hope.
Neville.
Yes, I think I am learning a whole lot, and I have been observing. But really what comes to mind is the fact that if we are in a country and leadership is not really focusing on uniting the different levels of culture that is here, that can be a problem. We might have very, very good ideas and we want to do something positive. But because we are the minority, we are always underneath. And so what is necessary at this point is for those who are in leadership to place some emphasis on the fact that despite it's a country with so many different races and so many different cultures, but at the same time, it is called the United States of America. Based on what I have observed, I'm here now for maybe, think about 30 years going on, and I look at the operation of what goes on in each of these United States, and there are times when I come to draw an analogy in the fact that based on what I see operating, it's like we are in 50 different countries. What is necessary is that the voices of those who are oppressed, that their voices be heard. But how are they going to be heard if the ones who are in the executive positions are really treading down on even those who are trying their very best to see what can come out of a nation where there is so much division? I look at the Constitution of the United States of America and I began to compare what is written in regards to the Communist Manifesto, because the Communist Manifesto, it is said to be one of the greatest pieces of writing. But when I look at the American Constitution, I do believe that if the right persons were put in place and put in position, then things would not have gone where it has reached even at this point. But there is a stigma of this superior complex, and it is rising higher and higher and higher, because look at the leadership of President Obama. Despite he was the president, but when you look at his leadership and some of the things that he was really trying to do, that there were still some heels in his neck as well. And a lot might be saying, well, he should have done more. But when we look and analyze how his presidency was being looked at the majority, and the majority, I'm talking about the white folks, because I'm not going to put my mouth on the ground and talk about the partiality of the white folks. Now, we know that racism, it's a continuous thing, and it's going to be very, very difficult to eliminate it completely. But I do believe that what is necessary at this point is that somebody who is at the center of government, at the center of leadership, is to take a stock and to see exactly what is creating this confusion, what is creating this tumult, this chaos that is happening in the society today. It's all because the ones at the top, they are like the animals out there in the wild. I like to watch that animal thing, because I learned.
National Geographic.
Yes. I learned so much from it, because it's a case where you look at the smaller ones and the bigger ones are always eating up the smaller ones. And it's the same thing in our society today. The bigger lions, the big lions are eating up the small lambs. This is what is happening.
Yeah.
But I believe, brothers and sisters, I believe that what has occurred, this has bring about a great awakening. And I believe that we should continue to work on this. We should pool our minds, our efforts together, and see exactly what can come out of this. Each person's voice is important, and each person's voice is necessary.
Sophia and Shernet. Sophia and Shernet. Yeah, man, go ahead, Shernet.
Well, no, Sophia, you can go ahead if you don't mind.
Sophia.
Yes, the change, I agree with you, sir. I'm telling you, and until the reform, here's what's gonna have to happen. The reform, the police force, which is still on my mind. I get the whole general discussions on racism in itself, because that can be endless. It's endless. The reform of the police force is what's needed. And once we get the buy-in from the heads and those that are in charge, looking at how they are hiring, you need to be able to vet these folks and find out if there's any inkling of any racism in any iota of their being. They cannot be on the force. It's as simple as that. How do we hire? Because the racists are going to be there. But where do they belong? And if they have those inclinations, they cannot practice it on the force because there is going to be consequences. So that is simple as that. This is just the group I'm talking about, you know. Racism, we cannot educate the entire world. And just so you know, before I go, the fact that the voices are being heard, and I look at these rallies, and I am pleased to see it's more than us that are out there.
Yeah, that was good.
Talking for us. So the cry is out there, it's unanimous. Change is going to come, but in the little police force, the reform is absolutely important.
Norman, what do you see? What kind of reform do you see coming? I mean, out of this type of thing, and you know, there's another. Yeah, tell me.
I will do the macro and the micro, right?
Yes.
So I think on a macro level, it's kind of funny. We had the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and the brother made the point earlier, which is a valid point, that you have to be concerned with who is in power, right? But I really think it doesn't matter who is in power. You see, because in 1964, with the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Kennedy had been assassinated. This president who was for change had been assassinated, right? There were riots in the streets of America. And there was a march in Washington the year before in 1963, right? With blacks and whites and other people in America moving towards Washington, D.C., demanding justice and demanding change, just like we see the young people today demanding justice and demanding change. And guess what? The president who took over from Kennedy, he was a Dixiecrat. His name was Lyndon B. Johnson. He himself was a part of this avowed good old boys network that had nothing to do and never wanted to see anything good happen for people of color in this nation. And in fact, the Dixiecrats, right? They were Democrats, but they were just reformed Republicans who were actually the Republican Party of the South. They were in control of Congress. And yet it was these Dixiecrats and this president of a questionable background that were able to put together and pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act, that we today can go and stay in any can go and eat in any restaurant through the front door, can go and stay in any hotel, right? That anywhere in the borders of the United States. It happened at a time when the leaders of the nation were against everything that the civil rights movement stood for and that the people were demanding. So I'm saying that today, I am very hopeful, very hopeful. So change is gonna come.
Yeah, go ahead. I want the micro.
In terms of the police department,
yes,
we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Every suggestion that's being made is a part of the 6-pillar platform of 21st century policing that was put together in 2015 by business leaders, police officers, members of the Black Lives Matter Coalition. All of these people came together and put this thing together in 2015. We've put it on a shelf and we've stopped trying to move forward with it. But it's already done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to put them into practice. The idea of guardian versus warrior, the idea of the culture of transparency, the idea of having a diverse police force, right? The idea of police officers having having this thing called coffee with the cops.
Coffee with the cops, yes.
Mentoring young children. All of these things are things that all these psychologists, sociologists will tell you are necessary. Guess what? We have it. It's a 6-point plan, right? That is 116 pages. Let's move as together as one nation to put it into practice at the federal level, the state level, and the municipal level.
And you know,
well, I mean, we are seeing some change right now too, because I think in Minnesota and in Los Angeles, the police departments, the chiefs are saying, okay, there are certain things that are not going to happen again, and they're being vocal about it, and actually looking at the rules and laws, particularly chokeholds and restraining somebody by the neck. That has already changed, and a few states are slowly following through.
Yeah,
Beverly.
I was thinking that just as Dr. Hemming said, that change doesn't necessarily have to come from the top. Sometimes change comes from bottom up. And so even the change that you talked about with Lyndon B. Johnson's time, I mean, the reason why the government changed the laws is because of what the people were doing, and they sustained their resistance, you see. So I'm thinking that change doesn't have to come from the top. But the one thing though is that I believe that we will see changes small changes, maybe some big changes, but the basic problem that hasn't changed, and I don't want to say will never change, I'll just say it will be very difficult for it to change, is the nature of man. And because the nature of man will remain essentially the same until such time as whatever you believe is going to happen, we will have this problem again and again. It will come in different ways at different times, but until the basic nature of man changes, we're going to have this problem. And so I believe that each individual must for themselves decide how they will effect change within their circle of influence. And as each person does what they can do in their circle of influence, and it kind of, you know, mushrooms out to other people, then we'll see some changes. But I don't anticipate, just like my friend, Dr. Bradford, I don't anticipate that we're going to have an overall final change. Not in this dispensation anyway.
Sure.
And our country, our country is a country, unlike Japan, that we promote individualism.
Wow.
So and that,
that's
Japan,
another story.
Yeah. Japan promotes group. You know, you are a part of a group. The group is more important than you, that kind of thing. And that gets over very easily. But and in fact, that's probably one of the reasons why the crime rate is so low over there. It's 1% crime. Crime. There's 99% crime free.
But though, Leo, I think in this country we are groups when it's convenient, when it comes to the economics of the situation, which leads to racism and keeps, if you're going to have a minority and, and calling people by different groups because of their colors and their economic status, that's it right there. I mean, they band together. We band together when it's convenient, right? And if we look at it, in a positive sense, when we need to get together as groups consistently, like the Japanese, for the benefit of the country, then things can be different.
There's a thought here that kind of bugging me, right? And I think both Neville and Sophia addressed it, right? And Sophia says, and Neville says, mental slavery, right? There are two sets of people here in our midst. One set who are mentally enslaved. They are oppressed not because the people oppress them, but because they believe or they actively are acting oppressed. They don't stretch themselves and go outside the box. They live within the box that's given to them, right? And those people, no matter what you do, you won't see them out there protesting. They won't be out there speaking against anything. They will just say, this is what the law says. Yes, passive. Okay. And then there are the people out there who are fighters to the death, who will, push the system, and they are at the minority. They're the minority, the people who will actually stand up for their rights against a police officer or stand up against a white person. There was a video that went around the other day, right? Where this woman walking her dog unleashed, and the black man says to her, "You need to leash your dog." And then what happened? She starts crying and saying, "You're somebody who's trying to hurt me."
There's an African American.
Yes. Who remembers that? Okay. Under normal circumstances, a young man who doesn't have the kind of experience would probably fold under that kind of pressure. But he says, "Hey, I want you to call the police. He was so balanced. It was so unbelievable. So these are the kind of pressures that are out there. Now, how do we get the people who are mentally oppressed, who are mentally enslaved, to be there on the same page with the people who are fighters?
Okay, Leo. So when it comes to mental slavery, it's not just the black people who are in it. the white people who are raised to be racist, they're also slaves. Because at the end of the day, I'm so sorry, Gretel, but I tell you what, this thing has got to change. And it's not going to change overnight, but yes, racism is going to go, and it's going to be very simple. At the end of the day, this country in particular, it's a melting pot of people. And we know the immigration laws have been fighting to keep it right as white as possible, and to block out persons such as yourselves and the rest of us from, you know, different from countries. We're coming in with people of color. The immigration laws and rules are different, and it forces that to stay, you know, keep us in the minority, so to speak. That is the challenge, and that's going to change. They've been trying very hard. It's not going to happen. If you look at America today, slowly it was white here. No, this is it. It's a mixture of everybody else. Plus, we're having interracial marriages, and children are coming up looking different. And that is where the man who want to keep it white and extremely white, it's a problem for them. And that can never continue, because unless you're going to go back to the Jim Crow and explaining that, listen, you can't date that person, you can't have children with that, it is going to change. There's absolutely nothing they can do about it. Yeah. And, you know, when Sophia mentioned the psychological testing of these police officers, no, they themselves are coming out and saying, listen, we have crazies up in here and we need to get them out. So once they do that and get rid of the crazies, things will move forward. And at the end of the day, it really boils down to the, you cannot stay silent anymore. And we should not allow this opportunity that this crisis, this double crisis has given us. We should not allow it to just go away like it never happened. I want my children and my children's children and everyone to remember it. Keep it in the back of your mind. The same way we remember that we were packed like sardines and came out of Africa. Somewhere along the line, we forgot that. We need to remember that and hold everybody accountable. And it's not just the Black race. It's every race, including the white race, who have always had their own challenges in their own. Everybody together need to understand injustice is injustice. We're all humans. That's what we are. Stop, you know, for me, I will tell you, I stopped a long time ago. When I'm filling out forms, don't ask me what race I am.
I was going to comment on that.
Human. I always say human. That's what I am. Do not class me.
Yes.
I see Gretel. Hold on there. I see Gretel saying, me teacher.
And two things. One, I want to say, we are not a melting pot in the United States. We're a salad bowl.
Yes.
And just like a salad bowl has all these different flavors, that's what America has. And we have to recognize the
But we're changing it, though, Gretel.
No, because when you melt, you become, it's almost like you skim off what is not good and throw it away. And very often it's the Black people who is not good that is skimmed off and thrown away, okay? The people of color. So we have to recognize that, just like Dwayne said, this is a diverse country. And if we can accept our diversity, then it means that we can bring everybody's flavor in. We can honor everyone. That's the first point.
That's the definition of a melting pot.
Yeah. But this is when you do the melting pot, you know, it means that there is one perfect gold, one perfect state. And that is what people have been holding on for a long time. And they need to let that go. They need to say we're different, we're wonderful, and we are all wonderfully made by God. In songs,
and that's how I feel about it. When I say a melting pot, that's my reference, because it's all ingredients. Just like with cooking, you throw it all in, and at the end of the day, we're different, and you can taste the flavor.
Some good Jamaican pumpkin soup.
Yellow yam.
Bring the flavor and make it nice. That's the first point. The second point. The second point, and then I'm.
Hold on. What are you guys talking about?
The second point, and then I'm going to be quiet.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I have to read this thing from Martin Luther. Yes. And he said, with patience and firm determination, we will press on until every valley of despair is exalted to new peaks of hope, until every mountain of pride and irrationality is made low by the leveling process of humility and compassion, until the rough places of injustice are transformed into a smooth plane of equality, of opportunity, and until the crooked places of prejudice are transformed by the straightening process of bright-eyed wisdom. When we get to that place, we can say that racism will be gone. But there are lots of mountains to climb. There are lots of valleys to be traversed. Okay, and we have been speaking about them, but we have to be able to face it, to teach our children how to face it, to be angry, but to also put that alongside with hope. Because when we do that, we can now say, all right, we fight for it. What we was fighting for, this is what we fought for. And our children now can now play together, thrive together, grow together, you know? So that's my 2 points. Right?
Here's what we're gonna do from here, right? Because we're against time now. So we're gonna wrap this up. So we're gonna give each of you 2 minutes to wrap up your pieces, right?
I'm done.
So here's
Leo, let's start with Dwayne. We've not heard from Dwayne. Dwayne,
we're gonna get there. So we're gonna go. This is where we're gonna go to finish up, right? Dwayne, Sophia, Neville, Gordon,
there's too many children in the
Grethel,
family.
yes, Grethel, and Norman, yes, and Norman, yeah. That's the way we're gonna go. So go ahead.
I could talk until tomorrow, you know.
Oh, we know that. We know. You learn from Grethel. You learn from Grethel.
Yeah, I'm learning still, yes. But there are a few points I want to make with my little time. The first thing is where it relates to leadership, that the long-time philosophers long ago talk about democracy and the dangers of democracy. It falls in the mind of the people, because the people choose the leader in a democracy. So what Kennedy mentioned also is that the uninformed voter is a threat to democracy. So it boils down to, who do we elect based on quality, based on somebody who will channel our diversities, who will channel their energy into making a difference for all of us and make the playing field very level, especially people of color who have not 4 generations of wealth behind them, but 1 generation of wealth, because the one son they have just went to college. You know, so they have to start right there with democracy, to inform people so that they not become uninformed, and also to let them put aside their prejudices. You know, talk about leadership for all. That is the whole purpose of politics, not the corruption. And then on the ground level, where the momentum starts, we need to channel the energy in the right direction. So we start this uproar and the loudness about this, which is very good. You know, the fire started. But we do not need to break down our society. We don't need to attack people and start the looting and the shooting. We don't need to do that. What we need to do, we need to channel that energy into policy. We need to get people of color on the law benches. We need to get them in the police forces. So like those 50-something police who quit because of those two push down the old man in Buffalo. We need 50-something colored people take over those positions and say, we're better than this. You know, if you quit because of that, it signals something that, oh, you open the doors for some other people to lead. And then finally, just to put it in a context, people need to lead by example. If you want change, you have to change yourself, and you have to do it in a way that people see practical returns for them. So if people of color fight and fight hard, then they tell their kids to fight hard too for this, and they make the sacrifice to put their generation way better than their parents, so that they can look back and say, we have journeyed this far all because of the sacrificial love, the agape love that I have for the country and for the generations that will come. That's where we are. It all boils down to one word: love. Love for what and love for who are coming next.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My
Sophia.
turn.
Yeah, man.
Beverly, I heard you, and I just wanted to comment on when you said change starts from the bottom.
Yes.
The pressures, hold on a little bit, the pressures, hold on, the pressures of change start from the bottom, but the action is from the top. Because we could make noise from now till tomorrow. If the decision makers are not buying with it, we're not going to make it. But here's another point to make now. The pressures have begun, and I'm very pleased, as I said earlier, to see the level of rallying, and the call is all around the globe. When I look at the calls from UK and Canada, it is reaching far and wide, because racism is a global pandemic. But now that we have awakened now more than ever, because we see this, if he was shot by a gun, I kid you not, we may not have had this. But this particular image of a man with a knee in the man's neck, it's broken something in all of us that we cannot even sit on this panel and discuss. It is so deep. And the rallying call is here for all of us. But guess what? We have to stay the course. The Montgomery cries with the bus, I'm losing the term, but the Montgomery uprising, it lasted for a year. When we make so much noise in 3 weeks and shut up, the people just take us for a joke. Oh, and then new things come in, and the discussions change, and they shelve it, like Norman said. The book was written, but it shelved it collecting dust, because the cry was not, and the pressure was not on. We have to keep the pressure, and the heads and the powers that be will have to concede. That's why we're here today. Pressure was put, and that's why we mentioned we can sit in a restaurant, we can sit at any part of the bus we want, but the pressure must be maintained. I'm gonna be, you call me tragically romantic, but I feel it's gonna come.
Me never hear that one before. Tragically romantic.
Tragically romantic.
Julia.
Oh, the classical
If you watch the series Annie with an E, you will be educated. But absolutely, I believe it, and we're going to hold on to this, and let's keep it going. The blaze start, keep the fire going. Keep it going. Make them tired away.
Not true.
Tired,
Thank you.
see me face.
Yes,
That's how you keep it up, okay? Thank you.
Right. Neville.
Yes. What's the name of that lady who just spoke a while ago?
Sophia Elaine Jackson Nicholson, whatever.
Leave me alone, and Nicholson.
Sophia, you have really taken what was on my mind, because that is exactly what I want to close on, in the fact that where change is concerned, I know exactly that a lot of resistance will come from below, but how far can that resistance goes? Now, in a case where the focus of change is coming from the top, where when these guys who are in those executive positions, whenever they talk or whenever they get together and decided that this is going to be law, that is the stem of authority. So where change is concerned, I do believe that in order for change to remain and for change to really stick fast, it has to come from the top. Yeah. And I am looking at the three main branches of government in the United States. That's where the stem of authority is. And so if these guys at the top do not really see the oppression and the depression and the kind of slavery that the minority at the bottom is really experiencing, then we will all be on the street making noise, and some will be looting, but nothing else will happen. These guys at the top, they are the ones who will have to take things in charge. They have to really look at the situation and see exactly what the ones who are oppressed, the pain that they are experiencing. Now, I look at one particular aspect in regards to electing a president. And if you look at what happened, that the gone by president, the former president, Barack Obama, that he tried his best, but at the same time, although he was trying, but there was still some heel on his neck. Now, I go back to the election with Mrs. Clinton and our now president. And despite of the fact that Mrs. Clinton had 3 million votes in excess of the winner of the election, but yet she was not elected. Now I look at an aspect in the control where the election is concerned, and I look at the Electoral College. I do believe that where the Electoral College is concerned, I'm not asking for everyone to agree with me, but I do believe that there is a kind of a strategy there in order for these elites to make their own selections, because I believe that when the people voted, that their vote should count. But based on what happened in this last election, it seems as if our voting makes no sense. Now, if things like these are happening and we are living in a democratic society, government for the people and by the people, if this continues to happen, we will be crying out for the next eternity for change, and change will never happen. These folks at the top, they need to take their heels out of our necks and allow us to have the freedom that the Constitution really lays out and displayed.
I like that.
And
Thank
I don't
so
think
much.
I have anything more to say.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
like
you,
that.
sir.
Take their needles out of our necks, because
Exactly.
we can't seem to breathe. Beverly.
So happily, I think we're all on the same page as far as the fact that if the people at the so-called bottom don't do what they need to do,
Have
the
to.
people at the top will not change. So
That's
no matter
right.
which way you look at
We
it,
have to
change is
keep-
coming from the bottom.
Well, essentially, it starts.
I think part of our mental slavery is that we have not yet internalized the idea that we can win, or that we can be the voice as Black people. We're still enslaved by the idea that somebody has to give us permission to make something happen. And until we get to the point where we're freed of this mental slavery that says, I can do what I choose to do because I have been given the power of choice. It's a God-given gift, the power of choice. I don't have to wait for permission to make something happen. So that's
We would have a good date here.
as far as
For
the
a
mental
good
slavery is concerned. And then I think that our change is going to come through certain things like experience, which is part of that releasing ourselves from mental slavery. Education, as has been mentioned several times before, starting in our homes with our children. And solidarity, building solidarity within our community, learning to trust each other so that we can stand as a solid force, not as a broken down wall. And refusing to be consumed by hate. Because if we become consumed by hate, we're then not able to function in a reasonable manner. We then just are loose, like we put ourselves on the same level as the animals who just kind of function out of sheer rage, instinctive rage. But no, we must allow ourselves to calm the hate and actually function by reason and a consistent and persistent reason that takes us to a desired goal. I believe that we should channel our hurt into building bonds of love, resilience, and power.
Wow.
We're on the same page
said,
there.
Dr. Gordon.
Whoa.
Well said.
Whoa. Well said.
Wow.
Yes. Now, Gretel.
Oh, Norman first.
Oh, Norman.
All right. Yeah, I think
Secretary.
I really can endorse everything that people have said on this, and I'm remain humbled to be a part of this call. Change is coming to America and to the world, in fact. And I think it's coming as a result of a confluence of issues. I'm not so worried about those fringe groups of hate mongers, right? I'm more worried about people like Leo Gilling-Reyes, like that woman in New York. Her name is Amy Cooper. She's a registered Democrat, an avowed liberal. She donated heavily to the Barack Obama campaign, and yet she called the cops on an African-American man who asked her to explain.
Oh my God.
That's
Dissonance. Dissonance.
Because it's important for us to educate not only ourselves, but to educate others in our society. And I'm encouraged because of the fact that a woman like Amy Cooper is overcome by another woman, a 17-year-old girl by the name of Darnella Frazier. You see, George Floyd is the reason why we're marching in the streets, but the truth is, Darnella Frazier is the real reason, because this 17-year-old thought it not robbery. She wasn't scared. And despite it being in fear for her life, she continued to record for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while they had their knee on the neck of this brother. This young high school student continued to do what many of us as adults would have walked by, saying we're not getting involved, roach no business in our foul backyard. But she got involved, this young lady. And so things are gonna change. Things are gonna change, one, because of people like Darnella Frazier. Things are gonna change also because in the year 2016, the majority of kindergartners in the United States were people of color. And by the year 2044, the overwhelming majority of Americans will be people who look like Leo Gilling and who look like me and everyone else that's on this panel here.
We are called me black. We are called me black.
And beautiful. And beautiful.
So it's interesting.
Leo, you're dark chocolate.
Because people of goodwill all around the United States and all throughout the world have realized the error of their ways and are going to rise up. And even our liberal friends, some of whom are like Amy Cooper, even they will be educated and come to turn away from their inner thoughts and come to the reality that we're one people, one nation, united under God, who serve a sovereign Lord. And that's why things are going to change. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you here.
Amen.
today.
Amen. Amen. Pastor, amen.
Thank you. Go ahead now.
Me?
Yes.
All right. So what I want to end with is, I love music. I love Bob Marley.
One
So,
love.
One
No,
love.
Leo,
But
when it hits, you
there's
feel no pain.
the song that I wanted to really pay attention to is Until the Philosophy, which holds one race
Until
superior
the philosophy
and another inferior is finally and permanently
Yeah.
discredited and abandoned. Everywhere
everywhere is
war.
what? Pum, 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 pum,
And
pum, pum, pum,
when
pum.
and guess what? We cannot keep war all the time. No war has lasted for 10 years or whatever. What comes after that must be peace. But with the peace, we have to be persistent. Okay? But it's okay for us to have the war because peace will come, right? But
Yes.
be persistent.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing because
Well-
what Judge Hemming said and what everyone is saying pretty much is exactly what we have to hold on to. Don't lose focus. Understand that this is happening for a reason and there has got to be results from this. Don't focus on looting. Don't even talk about in my mind, I'm already convinced that half of this looting thing is not anything that the protesters themselves are putting out there. They're disruptors in the mix, trying to make it look like it's about Black people being disruptive and crazy. That is not it. Don't lose focus on what this is all about. Do not get complacent if you get results from this. Don't get comfortable, because at the end of all of this, if we're comfortable, we're going to go right back to where we were to start again. And all this juke starting thing, it's not going to work. We have got to stop because we will consistently be having wars because of this. All right, don't stay silent, people. Do not stay silent. You might feel strongly about this. Say something, and I'm talking to everybody. I don't care what your color is. I don't care how you're bringing your class. I don't care what your reality is. Go out there and cry and say, you know what? I'm canceling my mother until she's on board with me on this, because this is important. It's important for everybody. I don't care. And I tell my Republican friends, I'm like, listen, man, all right, I don't know how we got here, but no, you have a responsibility to me and my children and my friends and family and everybody else to come out there and say, I stand with them and we need to change this. And if it means going out there, vote, vote, vote. You cannot just make a lot of noise, empty barrel. Don't be an empty barrel. Make your noise, do what you have to do. Go out there and you make sure you vote and you make sure it go in the box and you make sure it count. And forget about the electoral college, because when they come with that next time, everybody count. Me count, you, everybody count. and make sure you take a stand against all of this, because at the end of the day, it's economical racism, and it's not going to go away until we ourselves say, yeah, no, you can't buy and sell me anymore. We're done with it.
I think that I'll be in the right place if I ask Pastor Neville to finish with a 1-minute prayer. All right? Are you guys okay with that? Yes? Okay.
1 minute. Let me get him. Hold on 1 second.
She go time you, Neville.
No.
Okay.
I'm just making sure that he's not muted.
Go ahead.
He seems to be muted. Hold on. Leo, I'm trying to unmute him.
Oh, he's muted? No, he's on the. Oh yeah, he's on.
Leo.
Oh, can we hear you now?
Neville, say something.
No, he was okay.
He was okay just now.
He's offline.
He's
okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead now.
Hearing me now?
Yeah, man.
Dear God, O Heavenly Father, thou who art the King, the Creator. Where you are concerned, Father, there is absolutely no difference between color. You see us by our spirit. And Father, as we have gathered here at this location, Father, individually, but Father, our hearts and our minds have the same objective. We ask that the strength, the wisdom, the courage, and the patience, and the pathos of power would be granted unto each and every one of us. And so that whatever we will be doing, it will be done effectively, and your name will be glorified in it all. We ask, Almighty God, that you take charge of this entire country. It's a global mishap that the enemy has crept in, Father, and there is a global division. But Father, we ask that the people whom you have called and elect would come to the commonality with the common understanding that we are of one Father. Heavenly Father, I ask that your blessing, your grace, your mercy, and your peace rest with each and every one of us as we ask it now in Jesus' name, and everyone say amen.
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 All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Hold on, Leo, I have to just one thing.
Okay.
The Montgomery buses were integrated on December 21, 1956. 381 days, my brother. That's how long our people protested.
Whoa, that's
you
1 year. 1 year and about 3 weeks.
And change. So let's keep it up.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank Facebookers. Thanks to all the people on Jamaicans.com and Facebookers. Thank you so much for that. We'll see you again next time. All right. Bye-bye now.
Yeah, see you next Saturday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.